Deadpool 3 might be the Hail Mary that the MCU was so incredibly desperate for. I don't think I have to be the one to tell you that the MCU, well, just isn't what it used to be. In a world where everyone stopped collectively giving a shit about Marvel, Kevin Feige finally wised up and let Deadpool come in and save this very dead franchise. Also, stick around to the end of the video for a more personal message and a special announcement that I want to share with you guys. So without further ado, go ahead and get your cocaine. Huh? No, we can't do cocaine. That's like the one thing. Adopt a dog pool, and let's get straight into it. The movie kicks off in a classic Deadpool fashion, with a bloodbath that we get no context for until 90 minutes in. This one picks up quite some time after the events of the second one, where Wade uses his time machine that he got from Cable to bring back everyone. Everyone is brought back to life. But of course, this is the MCU, where death has no meaning. We get returning characters like Vanessa, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, coolest name ever, Peter, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Colossus, Dopehinder, Blind Owl, and oh so many others. And that's how I can tell that this is a work of fiction, because, like, come on, man. A group of close friends caring about you and celebrating your birthday? That's not real. Party is cut short, however, when TVA agents show up to Deadpool's house to let him know that his reality is going to light itself on fire, like that one Florida man. And the only way to save himself is by joining the OG MCU timeline and becoming a member of the Avengers. This is all happening because 2017 Logan is the only one holding this reality together the Boeing way, with duct tape and strings. So he's holding the reality together, and we know that Wolverine's like a couple hundred years old. So what was holding the reality together before? The dinosaurs? God? Also, he hasn't technically died yet, has he? Has he? Because Logan takes place in 2029, and this one takes place, I believe, in 2024. Fuck it, it's a canon event. You can't interfere. I guess that's something that the X-Men will never be able to get rid of, is those fucked up timelines. Deadpool comes up with a pretty fucking solid play and just kidnaps another one from another reality. I mean, you had to at least try it once. Yeah, no, that shit did not work. Deadpool and Logan subsequently get vaporized into that weird trash dimension that they introduced in Loki, which I don't know anything about because I'm gonna keep it a buck, man. I did not watch Loki. This is where we're gonna be spending a considerable amount of the runtime, and also where you're gonna see the biggest amount of cameos and references, not just in the Deadpool series, but in any movie ever. So let's go ahead and talk about it now. There are approximately, I think it's called a metric McFuck ton of cameos and references down here. They took all the meta jokes and the fourth wall breaks and the cameos and all that stuff and taken it to the biggest extreme they ever have. This one still does all that, but very different because there's actually a purpose here. And spoilers moving forward. Elektra, Daredevil, kinda, Blade, oof, X-Men The Last Stand, Logan, X-Men Origins. I mean, it is X-Men bonanza up in here. And instead of just, taking the easy route and bringing back these characters and movies just for a cheap laugh, Sean Levi actually uses this movie as sort of a swan song for all those heroes from the early 2000s. If you're a bit on the younger side, then you probably weren't aware, but yeah, Iron Man was not the first superhero movie. Far from it, actually. We had so many X-Men movies and superhero movies before the MCU took over, but you never see anyone talking about them anymore. They've sort of just been like lost to time or nostalgia. I think mainly because at the time, the world just wasn't quite ready for superhero movies, and studios never really embraced like the full chaos that the comics can bring to life. Most of the hero movies that we got back then felt like, I don't know, just a watered down version of what you would see in the comics or even today. The special effects also just, weren't quite there yet either. And hell, I mean, they're not even here half the time today. And I mean, there was so many other reasons. I could do this all day, but they still gave it a shot. Not a great shot, but a shot nonetheless. They also brought out this little number, which in their imagination was going to spark an entire lineup of X-Men Origins movies. But to my point, I appreciated that they used this movie to sort of tie up all those old movies that never got their own chance to have that big final hurrah and gave us some closure after like 20 years. Sorry, gotta take my blood pressure medication. Captain America, Deadpool, Wolverine, and Johnny Blaze, yes really, head over to face our big bad down here in the void, Cassandra Nova, who is Charles Xavier's long-lost, strong female character twin. She's basically a Morton Joe, but with a little less child grooming, and a lot less child grooming than Ava Chris. Their plan is to take her down and go back home using Juggernaut's helmet. And when I say Juggernaut, I mean that weird as shit Cockney Juggernaut that they came up with for X-Men The Last Stand, like in 05.
The Juggernaut, bitch!
Let's just say I'm glad that he's down there in the void because I fear what a person like him would say if he were to run into his old nemesis again.
Huh?
But I digress. They escape the void, return home, and Cassandra loses every ounce of goodwill and respect that I had for her in a matter of minutes. Because I assume there's a limit to how many good, compelling villains we can get in the MCU, and by now we're fresh out. Instead of taking the time to flesh out Cassandra's character, give her some depth, give her some motivations, maybe give me some backstory so I can empathize with her. No! Fuck you! Throw her in the wants to take over the multiverse column. Because we've never done that before. This is a humongous problem at Marvel. You can't expect anyone, no matter how low their IQ is, to connect with this type of storytelling. Who actually thinks this shit is ever gonna work?
No one.
When every single movie you put out has the villain trying to take over the universe or trying to take over the multiverse, I am immediately disconnected from that narrative. It worked in Infinity War, and it worked with Thanos, and it worked really well. But that was 10 years of storytelling and build-up and a climax, and it paid off. And it paid off big time. But this is a standard-ass 2-hour summer blockbuster, and it just doesn't work here, man. I think the best example that I can use is Quantumania. Because I was there. Dude, I was there opening night. I saw all the trailers for months. No one was more hyped. Actually, you see this little thing? This is the menu. This is the menu that we got for Quantumania when I went to see it in the Alamo Drafthouse. And I was so hyped to see it. Nobody was more hyped than I was. And that shit was mid as fuck. But why? What went wrong? These are questions that you're not asking, but I'm answering anyway. Ant-Man is probably one of the smallest characters in the MCU. Both literally and kind of spiritually. And don't get me wrong, I love Paul Rudd. Bro does not miss. But when I think about the MCU, I don't necessarily think of Ant-Man. And Kang is meant to be the biggest bad, one of the biggest bads in Marvel. Possibly bigger than Thanos. Don't quote me. And if this guy can take down that guy, well then what the hell do I care? What's really at stake here? Nothing. And when everyone's taking over the multiverse,
no one will be.
No surprise, the day is saved. Cassandra turned into Mom Spaghetti. Wolverine joins Deadpool back in his universe, along with OG X-23 Laura. The movie wraps up and everyone lives happily ever after. Except for Johnny. But fuck Johnny. Once again, Ryan Reynolds just embodies Deadpool in every sense of the word. His jokes, timing, delivery lands damn near every single time, joining Robert Downey Jr. and Hugh Jackman as staple actors that just can't be replaced, but can be cast again as something else. The meta commentary and cameos and jokes, which of course all come from Deadpool, were a bit heavy, but that's entirely reliant on whether or not you like that sort of comedy. I do, but it does take up quite a bit of screen time, so if that's not your cup of tea, then you might grow a little bit tired of it. Beyond that, I enjoyed every second of Ryan Reynolds and what the entire team put together here, and I'm glad this movie exists. I will be counting the days until this is up on Disney+. Hugh Jackman, both figuratively and literally, does most of the heavy lifting. This prime example of a man went into retirement for 7 years, came back, and didn't skip a beat. His demeanor and portrayal of Logan are so unique that no matter how goofy or dead serious you want to get, it just doesn't get better than Hugh Jackman. The story behind this Logan is a sad one. A very depressing one. There's a lot to unpack here for Logan and a lot of amends to make with his past, and his arc throughout was pretty compelling. Dare I say, Logan's arc in this movie is right up there with Old Man Logan from 2017, which proves that this movie isn't just a bucket of fucks and blood and dick jokes. It actually gets pretty serious when it needs to, gives us time to connect with Logan, Wade, and all the other characters who have their own conflicts and motivations. Logan's arc is one of grief and its many stages. However, this is a spoiler-free section, so you're just gonna have to find out for yourself. But it was really good storytelling, and God, I really do hope they keep him till he's 90. I realize this hasn't been the most optimistic review up until now, and you might even think that I didn't like the movie. Could not be further from the truth. I loved this movie, man. This genuinely feels like the good old MCU. The plot isn't that complicated, the characters are not that deep, and there's no consequences here whatsoever. Perfect! This movie is a clear example of proper delegating. While it doesn't fulfill its own promise of Deadpool joins the MCU, I didn't walk away feeling empty-handed. As I mentioned before, this movie wraps up a lot of other older movies very respectfully, very tastefully, and every other scene was just pure fun. The Deadpool-Wolverine relationship is possibly one of the best dynamic duos I've ever seen on screen. Walter and Jesse, Jules and Vincent, Arthur and John, fucking anxiety and envy. That's junior varsity shit. Poolverine is the Olympics.
So maybe I'm not such a loser after all.
No, this whole thing, all of this, it's all about me.
These two are the perfect illustration of an unstoppable force and an immovable object. And it's not just their characters that have a great dynamic. It's the fight scenes too, man. They're fantastic. They're certainly not as fluid as something you would see in maybe like John Wick, but they are far better than pretty much anything else we've seen in the MCU, where it's just fucking cut galore. The music was also spot on every time. It's funny because it seems like no matter the director, Deadpool just seems to have his own musical vibe that just lands great in every film. Speaking of landing, I gotta land this plane. There isn't a whole lot to dislike about this movie, but there were hiccups. Cassandra Nova was super weak.
Hey, that really sucked!
As a villain. Paradox 2, I mean, these guys will be ejected from my memory in like 2 days.
Cassandra's got a lot in store for you. She's maybe not what you'd expect from your typical villain, but...
What will live in my memory forever is the slow-mo. Holy shit, man, it feels like the Snyder Cut up in here. The first two used a little bit of slow-mo, here and there, but this one, wow. Bold move. I hated it, but it was bold. I've said this 1,000 times before. Well, I guess I've never said it on the channel. So here it goes. Any movie that isn't in the Matrix universe should never use slow motion. Please ban the usage of it now. The opening sequence was a snooze fest, which is a slight problem because it's the opening minutes of your movie. It's your hook. And this one is about as sharp as my grandmother's knife set that she bought in the 90s. The whole old retired superhero shtick, you've seen it before, you've seen it 1,000 times before. It's a tired out plot device that they could have spent a little more time like fleshing out or just going with something else entirely. But the movie does kick off like pretty quickly, so I guess it's not that big of a deal. In conclusion, Deadpool and Wolverine is a damn good movie, packed to the brim with fun, excitement, comedy, action, blood, and a whole lot of Deadpool. Unfortunately, the plot was simple and bland, and the villains were a massive disappointment. I never felt as if anything was seriously in jeopardy, therefore removing the conflict for our heroes to overcome, and when you have no conflict, you have no story. While the narrative was less than perfect, it's a testament to the writers that despite the significant imperfections, what they lacked in conflict and story, they made up for with the characters. Their interconnectivity and relationships were the glue that held this movie together and left me incredibly satisfied walking out. I'm definitely seeing it again. Logan was the highlight of the film, and his journey of acceptance is an honorable one. This movie is a love letter to the X-Men and respects their legacy regardless of the imperfections, while also making me optimistic for their future in the MCU. In my book, Deadpool completed his mission and has restored my long-lost faith in the MCU. With that said, I think it is time for the rating. Deadpool Wolverine earns a bloody 10 out of 10. If you stuck around to the end of the video, which is this segment, I want to thank you very much. I wanted to share a personal message with you guys. This is not scripted. This is just me yapping. I have two things that I want to say. The first, if you're already a follower of the channel, then you might have realized it's been a few weeks since I last posted my videos. Don't worry, we're not taking a 3-year hiatus again like we did that one time. But I was going through a bit of a crisis, mostly emotional and like a mental, because this is still all new to me. Like this, I mean, the channel is growing at an exponential rate. You know, when I started this thing back up, it was 52, 55, right around that range, 50 subs, mostly friends and family. Of course. But now last time I checked, it was like 420. Well, that's a lot. I mean, that's our first video. We posted it in April-ish, I think, March, April. So, you know, it's growing quite a bit, growing more than I thought we would be, which I was wrong to doubt myself. But yeah, it's been sort of a scary transition because I've never had a regular life, but I have had regular jobs, you know, 9-to-5s, restaurants, stuff like that. Those jobs are always going to be around, and I've never lasted in any of them, ever. Most I lasted in a job was like 6 months, because I've never been the type to work or be able to work for anyone else. I'm my own person, and I know everyone says it. You know, everyone always says like, I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own business. Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's awesome. You should strive, you know, to serve yourself in the best way you can. But I always struggled with being able to lock down a job, mostly because of that issue, because I'm just too stubborn. Well, not stubborn. Well, yeah, actually. I'm a little bit stubborn, and then like 3-4 months into the job, I just stopped giving a shit and self-destruct and wind up getting myself fired. So when I started this YouTube thing, it wasn't the right time. I realized that it wasn't the right time 3 years ago to open it, because I was just trying to, you know, make other people's content my own and just copy paste and piggyback off of what other people made. Now I've really kind of found myself in these last 3 years, and I actually want to do something here. I want to build a community. I don't just want to have a YouTube channel with 1 million followers and call it a day. That's pretty boring. You know, I kind of want to build something here, a sort of community where, you know, you guys can come in and we can have fun, do streams or like post videos, talk about movies, have a Discord, you know, stuff like that. Pretty standard stuff for a YouTuber. But to me, it's really special because I've never really had friends like that. I've never had I've always had like one or two at a time and they just kind of wither out of existence. Fun fact, I actually got this tattoo with my then best friends. That didn't last, and that's not the first matching tattoo I've ever had. But I just wanted to share that, kind of like my absence a little bit. I was a bit scared of this whole YouTube thing. It's still new to me. I've had so many learning curves, and I'm still having them to this day. God, have I told you the shit that goes on behind camera. But I'm loving it. I'm loving every second of it. I love how much the channel is growing. I love to reply to your comments. You know, whether they're calling me a fucking idiot or actually contributing and saying something nice. I love you for watching. If you're listening to this right now, I love you. Thank you so much for watching. If you're not already subscribed, please do consider hitting that big red button underneath. But yeah, that's kind of like my little spiel that I wanted to share. Last thing, and I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up the video with this. I'm gonna be an uncle. And gave Deadpool with a bloodbath that we get rose from the early 2000s.